Simon Leclerc thought he had perfected the art of disappearing, but the same charisma that once made him the world's most infamous Tinder swindler became the very clue that led international investigators back to his trail of stolen fortunes and hidden allies. Simon Leclerc had always thrived in the shadows, a man who turned charm into a weapon and mystery into a disguise. Years earlier, his name had flooded headlines as the infamous Tinder Swindler, a slick con artist who dazzled women across Europe with extravagant promises before leaving them with empty bank accounts and broken trust. He served a brief prison sentence, and many assumed his story had ended there. When his release came, Simon seemed to vanish as though swallowed by the continents he once crossed so freely. For almost 3 quiet years, no one could trace his movements. He left no social media trail, booked no flashy parties, and avoided the nightclubs and designer boutiques he once loved. Investigators believed he might have finally retired, but silence is rarely the final chapter for a man addicted to deception. As the summer sun returned to Europe, faint whispers began to surface in the glittering cities where Simon had once hunted. In Paris, a young entrepreneur confided to friends that she had lost a fortune after meeting a sophisticated art investor online. In Milan, an heiress to a fashion empire described a man with dark eyes and an effortless smile who convinced her to join an exclusive investment circle. In Barcelona, a gallery assistant spoke of a mysterious traveler who admired rare paintings but vanished after securing funds for a supposedly urgent deal. Each story echoed the same pattern: a brief whirlwind romance, promises of exclusive opportunities, and sudden financial loss. Yet none of the victims could offer clear proof of theft. The accounts of their encounters sounded polished, almost rehearsed, as if the man behind them had perfected every step of the performance. Authorities began to take notice when these separate reports reached international fraud units. Experienced investigators who once tracked Simon recognized the telltale fingerprints of his schemes. Still, they faced a new challenge. Whoever was behind these recent incidents had refined his craft. Passports used for travel belonged to people who did not exist. Phone numbers disappeared after a single call. Bank accounts closed within hours. Even cryptocurrency transactions, which often leave faint trails, dissolved into digital smoke. It was as if someone was not merely evading capture, but anticipating every investigative move. Behind closed doors, cybercrime experts debated whether Simon Leclerc was truly the ghost behind these scams, or if an entirely new criminal had studied his past crimes and adopted his identity. Meanwhile, across Europe, the quiet hum of rumor grew louder. The legend of the Tinder swindler was stirring again, and this time, the game promised to be far more dangerous than before. The operation unfolding across Europe was unlike anything investigators had seen from Simon Leclerc before. Instead of the impulsive borrowing and sudden disappearances that defined his early scams, this new scheme unfolded like a carefully orchestrated performance. Simon no longer posed as a jet-setting billionaire searching for love. He now presented himself as an elite art investor, a man whose fortune came from secret deals with private collectors and underground auctions. To maintain the illusion, he acquired a wardrobe of understated luxury tailored suits without visible logos, antique watches that suggested old money rather than quick wealth. He rented apartments in historic neighborhoods under carefully fabricated identities and traveled using passports forged with microscopic precision. Every move felt deliberate, designed to leave nothing behind but questions. The heart of his deception lay in the art market, a world where beauty and rarity often obscure hard facts. Simon targeted wealthy professionals who yearned to be part of that rarefied circle. He invited them to private viewings of famous works that never truly existed, complete with forged certificates of authenticity and convincing backstories. Instead of pleading for personal loans, as he once had, he offered what sounded like airtight business partnerships. Victims were persuaded to transfer funds into cryptocurrency wallets for short-term acquisitions, believing they were buying shares of priceless paintings that would soon be resold at a massive profit. By the time they realized the paintings were fictional, the digital wallets had vanished, leaving only a chain of untraceable transactions. To protect himself, Simon relied on a sophisticated network of accomplices scattered across different countries. Some acted as couriers, others as middlemen, pretending to be collectors or gallery owners. They communicated only through encrypted apps and changed devices regularly, ensuring that even if one person was caught, the rest of the operation would remain hidden. Investigators who once pursued Simon for simpler crimes now faced a maze of false leads. Each financial trail ended in a dead zone where servers were beyond jurisdiction or records were wiped within hours. Cybercrime specialists in France, Italy, and Spain began to share intelligence, but every clue seemed to arrive a step too late. Simon's movements were as precise as a master thief's. He switched cities with uncanny timing, always departing days before local authorities obtained warrants. To those tracking him, it felt as though he had access to their strategies, anticipating their next move before they made it. What had once been a lone con artist charming strangers had evolved into a professional, borderless fraud, one that seemed designed not just for profit, but to prove he could never truly be caught. The first real crack in Simon Leclerc's carefully built fraud appeared not through a victim's complaint but in the quiet corridors of an Amsterdam art gallery. A seasoned dealer examining a recently submitted painting noticed something peculiar. The certificate of authenticity carried the name of a collector long deceased and a watermark that had been discontinued years earlier. The dealer, suspicious of a deeper scheme, alerted local authorities, suspecting a sophisticated art smuggling operation. What seemed at first like a single forged document soon unraveled into a pattern of deception spanning several countries. Investigators cross-referenced the certificate with reports of missing artwork and discovered overlapping dates and names that matched faint whispers of Simon's past activities. Interpol agents began piecing together the puzzle, comparing flight records, luxury apartment rentals, and cryptocurrency movements. They found that someone using multiple aliases consistently appeared in cities shortly before high-value art deals collapsed. Surveillance cameras at airports in Berlin and Zurich captured a man of similar build passing through security, always wearing gloves, always avoiding direct eye contact with staff. He carried no checked luggage and purchased tickets only hours before departure, a strategy designed to evade predictive tracking. Still, one small habit betrayed him. A victim from Madrid, a technology executive who had been convinced to invest in a phantom masterpiece, provided a crucial detail. She remembered the man's distinctive signet ring, a heavy gold piece engraved with an intricate crest. It was not a common design and could not easily be replicated. Analysts scrutinized hours of security footage from galleries, private clubs, and high-end hotels, isolating images of men wearing similar jewelry. When they compared those shots to older photographs of Simon from his first arrest, the match was undeniable. The ring, a personal indulgence he refused to abandon, became the thread that tied the new crimes to the infamous Tinder Swindler. Armed with this evidence, European cybercrime units coordinated with Interpol to establish a timeline of his movements. They tracked a series of short-term leases in Geneva, Milan, and Monaco, each linked to shell companies and false passports. Digital forensics experts followed fragmented cryptocurrency trails through servers hidden in multiple countries, finally pinpointing a cluster of wallets that appeared dormant but were in fact carefully shielded holding accounts. For the first time in years, investigators felt they were closing in. The chase that had seemed hopelessly abstract now had a face, a location, and a pattern. Yet even as they tightened their net, they knew Simon's reputation for vanishing acts could still turn their hard-earned lead into another dead end. The international task force crafted a plan that required absolute precision. Authorities from France, Monaco, and Switzerland agreed that a direct confrontation might drive Simon Leclerc back into hiding, so they built a trap that would appeal to his greatest weakness, his craving for exclusivity. An undercover team fabricated the sale of a lost 19th-century masterpiece, a painting rumored to have disappeared during wartime. They arranged for its private unveiling at a discreet Monaco gallery known for catering to billionaires and secretive collectors. Invitations were distributed only through whispered referrals and encrypted messages, ensuring the event appeared too tempting for Simon to resist. Weeks of preparation followed. False documents were printed, a forged painting, commission, and a network of plainclothes officers stationed in strategic positions both inside the gallery and across nearby streets. On the evening of the opening, Monaco's coastline shimmered with wealth and secrecy. Expensive cars rolled past quiet cafes, and the small gallery glowed like a hidden jewel beneath the city's lights. Guests arrived dressed in understated elegance, unaware that many of the attendees were undercover agents. Surveillance teams monitored every entrance, using tiny cameras concealed in flower arrangements and lighting fixtures. The atmosphere hummed with polite conversation and the faint scent of varnish from the freshly forged painting. Simon entered without fanfare, wearing a charcoal suit that blended easily with the crowd. He moved with the calm confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable, pausing to admire the art and exchanging brief nods with supposed collectors. To the agents watching through hidden earpieces, his every step felt electric. They noted the familiar signet ring flashing beneath the gallery's soft lights, the final confirmation that their target had walked directly into the trap. When the moment came, the arrest unfolded almost invisibly. Two officers in tailored evening wear positioned themselves near the exit, while others closed the surrounding streets. As Simon leaned closer to examine the forged masterpiece, a quiet signal was given. Within seconds, plainclothes agents surrounded him, presenting identification and guiding him away before he could speak. Guests gasped as whispers rippled through the room. Their exclusive gathering suddenly transformed into the scene of an international capture. Outside, unmarked vehicles whisked him to a secure location while additional teams swept his nearby residence, seizing encrypted laptops and multiple passports. By midnight, news outlets across Europe were flashing the headline: the notorious Tinder Swindler had been caught again, this time in a sting as elaborate as the crimes that brought him there. The arrest of Simon Leclerc made headlines across every major network. But the real shock came only after investigators examined the contents of his confiscated belongings. Among the tailored suits and forged passports were several encrypted drives, each protected by layers of security strong enough to challenge the best digital forensics teams. Weeks passed as experts worked around the clock to break the codes, eventually uncovering a maze of hidden cryptocurrency accounts and files labeled with cryptic names. Inside were detailed records of transactions involving sums far larger than those linked to his known victims. There were references to art pieces that had never been reported missing and notes suggesting connections to black market dealers on 3 continents. It became clear that Simon's recent schemes were only a fraction of a much larger operation. The more investigators uncovered, the more the case grew unsettling. Several names listed in the files belonged to individuals who had disappeared years earlier under mysterious circumstances. Others were tied to galleries that publicly claimed no knowledge of any illicit dealings. Intelligence agencies across Europe and North America began to suspect that Simon was not simply a lone con artist, but part of a sprawling network capable of laundering enormous amounts of money through the global art trade. Rumors surfaced of accomplices with diplomatic ties, enabling them to move priceless works and vast sums across borders without detection. Even as evidence mounted, Simon remained unnervingly calm. During interrogations, he refused to answer questions, his silence as calculated as the crimes themselves. Lawyers representing him filed motions to suppress the digital evidence, arguing that the encryption had been broken illegally. Meanwhile, key pieces of data began to disappear from secure police databases, as if someone on the inside was working to protect him. Investigators discovered that surveillance footage from several critical locations had been mysteriously erased, adding a layer of internal suspicion to the already tangled case. Public fascination grew with each new revelation. Documentaries speculated that Simon was merely the visible tip of a hidden empire of fraud, an empire that might continue even with its figurehead behind bars. When accomplices linked to the encrypted files abruptly vanished, the theory gained strength. By the time Simon's trial date was announced, authorities admitted that several encrypted wallets remained inaccessible and millions of euros unaccounted for. What had begun as the dramatic capture of a notorious swindler now looked like the opening move in a far larger mystery. The world watched, uneasy, wondering if the man they finally caught was only a front for something far more dangerous and enduring.